Hi there, welcome to another episode of Marketing Troubleshooter. This time we're going to be talking about a steel fabricator who has traditionally sold steel girders and other types of fabrication into the construction industry, a B2B activity, business to business, but they want to move into a completely different sphere. They want to move into selling high-end barbecues to the retail market because it sits within their skill set and it's a completely new venture for them. The challenge they've laid before us is how do they deal with this kind of company diversification? Because it is a big change. And specifically, how do they advertise this type of product to the retail market? Because that's something they've not had to do before. The solutions we're going to be talking about, we're going to be looking at different growth strategies. How can companies who are in one type of business move into and broaden their market into other areas as well? We're also going to be talking about channel strategy, which is particularly important for this market. Do they sell, for example, direct to consumers, or do they sell through resellers? We're going to be talking about website product listings, which are important if they sell direct or indirect. And we'll be looking at what kind of information they want on their website, and this is quite a revelation, what kind of information their competitors in the barbecue market already put on their websites. We're going to be talking about advertising. How do they advertise if they're selling direct? How do they advertise if they're selling through resellers? We're going to be talking about how to use social media groups and communities to build up a following around their products and their activities. And then finally, we're going to be talking about timing. When should they be planning this and when should they be executing it? Okay, so let's go through the brief, paraphrased version of it as we were sent it. Here we go. We're a small business employing just under 30 people. We're well established, but we have a very narrow marketplace. We supply steel fabrications to the construction industry. When the construction industry has a downturn, we suffer as badly as they do. We want to diversify into a different market to protect ourselves against downturns in construction. Great strategy. We know we can build a really high quality barbecue, but we don't know how to advertise it. Should we just use online advertising, or is it worth using magazines as well, or maybe radio? So they've got some ideas already. We could push our budget to £25,000 if we have to, but money is tight because the company's total turnover is still under £1 million. So that's still very much at the small end of the SME marketplace. We don't have any marketing staff, nor do we have a regular agency. That's no surprise in a company that size. We don't use any marketing tools, and because this is a new market to us, we haven't tried anything yet. What I love about this brief as well is it raises so many questions. I mean, there are so many things to go through that it is going to be a struggle to get this all into the normal 30 minutes, but let's have a go. Okay, let's look at growth strategies first of all. We're talking about company diversification here. If you saw our earlier videos on our website, or if you looked at any of the pages on there on the good old ANSOF matrix, you'll see that company diversification is one of the 4 ways a company can grow. But the strange thing about it is it's the most challenging. It's the hardest of all growth strategies, because company diversification is where you stop selling what you already know about and sell something completely different. And you stop selling to the people you know and sell to someone completely different as well. It's, as the name suggests, a complete diversification from what you already know. So the first thing I'd say to you is, are you sure this is the way you want to go? Because it is the most challenging option, and you have to be certain you're not trying to bite off more than you can chew. Before we leave this option, we just want to cover the other options that are available to you. So let's look first of all at market penetration. And this in many ways is one of the simplest strategies, because it just basically means selling more of what you already sell to the same market you already sell to. And when you suggest that to most businesses, they say, well, that's never going to work, because if we could sell more of what we sell to who we already sell to, we would be doing it already. But that's not necessarily true. Unless you've got 100% market share, there are always more sales you can make in the same market, because you don't dominate that market at the moment. From the research I've done, I can see already that the construction market and supply into the construction market is dominated by purchasing frameworks like Achilles and Construction Line. Beyond that though, below that, there's a lot of tier 2 business from smaller organisations like yourself supplying to the companies that win the big contracts through Achilles and Construction Line. So that's one area where there could be a lot of potential growth. The second area, of course, is that there's a huge amount of business, particularly local business, that happens below the Achilles and Construction Line level. Local business that doesn't go through those frameworks. And that's another area where you might find a lot of business without any significant company diversification. Okay, so the second option then is product development. This is where you still sell to the same market, but you develop a new product that suits that market. So for you, for example, you do a lot of fabrications, you do steel staircases, you do steel fire escapes, but the question that comes to my mind, and this is obviously I don't know your market and you do, is there a market for things like, I don't know, steel conservatory frames, for decorative metal work? There seems to be that market there. Is that a market that you could satisfy as well? Because if it is, it's well worth looking into, because to sell that kind of product into that kind of market, you already know the purchasers. You don't have to establish your company name, because the people you want to sell to already know who you are. So that makes it a much simpler option than company diversification, if it's available to you. The third type of diversification is market development. So this is where you're still selling the same products, but you're selling it to a new market. So the question here is, are the markets that you don't currently sell your products to? And again, the instinctive reaction from most businesses, no, there isn't. But just think a little bit more carefully. I alluded earlier to the fact that there's a lot of business that happens outside Achilles and Construction Line. Take a look at a lot of local business to see if there's smaller local construction companies that you could be selling to. On the opposite extreme, maybe there's an export market that's available to you. These are all ways of doing market diversification. So, those are the three other types of growth strategies alongside company diversification. So just take a look and think about those and make sure that you are confident in your own mind that this diversification into barbecues to the retail market is definitely the right route for you. Okay, so let's move on then to the next stage after growth strategies onto channel strategy. And what we're talking about here is, should you be selling direct to customers, or alternatively, should you be selling to resellers who then sell on to customers? And there's no right or wrong with this answer. It's just a question of exploring the different options that are available to you. Let's take a look at the first option then, the direct route, selling from yourself straight to customers. And the big advantage here is profit. If you sell a unit, a high-end barbecue for £1,500, all of that £1,500 comes to your bank account and you take your profit out of it. And although it's a very simple advantage, it is a big advantage. Money always is. But, there's always a but, there are disadvantages as well. So some of the disadvantages, as I've looked at this market already, you will be trying to sell online through your website a product, a barbecue, that a lot of people like to buy face to face. They like to go to a garden centre. They like to go to lots of other places like that, outdoor places where they can buy barbecues and they can have a look at them, touch them, see what happens when you open all the lids. You're not going to be able to tap into that market if you're selling direct and if you're selling through your website. One of the other big disadvantages is dispatch and logistics. Your business at the moment is business to business. You sell a small number of products to a small number of customers. If you sell barbecues direct to the public, you're going to be talking about selling a high number of products to a high number of customers, and there's going to be a lot of work involved in that. You're moving from a model that is high value, low volume to lower value and much higher volume, and that is a big change for any organisation to take on board. If you're dealing with retail as well, you're going to have to put in place all the type of things that wrap around any kind of retail offering. So some people are going to want to return their products. There's going to be a lot of administration involved in it, and there's going to be a lot of customer care. You've got to have people around ready to handle all of that kind of care. So the big question is, do you? You're also going to need a sales force. Because even if you sell direct, even if you sell through your website, there are going to be some people who want to ask questions. There are going to be some people who have shown an interest who just need an extra push to turn that interest into a purchase. Now at the moment, you're a sub £1 million company selling to construction. There's probably only 1, 2, 3 of you at the moment who handle all of the selling for the company. In fact, surprising, it might not even be 2, it might just be 1 person. This will require far more people, and the question is, do you have those people? So those are the advantages and disadvantages of selling direct. What's the alternative? Selling through resellers. What's the big advantage of selling through resellers? Well, there are several of them. First of all, you get an instant sales team. Their sales teams become your sales team. They're going to sell on your behalf. The other advantage is they've got an instant customer base. They already sell to a lot of people. A lot of people already trust them as a supplier. You get access to that customer base. And then logistics is much simpler as well. Instead of having to do logistics, sending out and dispatching one barbecue for every barbecue you sell, you send them out in batches of 10s or 50s or whatever to each of the resellers. So your administration workload becomes a lot lower. Those are all significant advantages, but there are disadvantages as well. The big one is discount. Resellers, they're not charities. The only reason they want to sell your products, your barbecues, is because they expect to make money out of it, and they want to make significant money, and you need to know or have an idea of how much money they're going to want to make. So let's just play with some numbers for a minute. Let's say that you are selling your barbecues for about £1,500. That looks like the low end of the, if you like, top of the barbecue market. They seem to go from about £1,500 to £3,000. So if the end user, the consumer, is going to pay £1,500, the reseller, don't know in this market, but the reseller is probably going to want about a 50% discount. They're going to want to do a 100% markup. So they are going to buy at £750. So you're going to be selling at £750. But you are also going to want to make about 100% margin, because otherwise, if you start talking about smaller and smaller margins on low volume products like this, then you're just not going to make enough money. So if you want to make 100% margin, you're going to have to be able to manufacture that barbecue for £375. So the question to you, can you? And you might want to turn around and say, actually, it's going to cost us £450 to make it, or £500, but we're happy with £250 margin. Well, in the long term, that will probably come back and bite you. You need plenty of margin in there. Having said all of that, there are plenty of organisations out there. There are plenty of venues you could think of to be resellers, garden centres, caravan sites, even supermarkets are selling it, DIY stores, lots of places sell this. kind of equipment, barbecue equipment. So there's plenty of potential out there. But if you're dealing with resellers, the first thing they want is margin. They want to make money. But the second thing is, you need to make yourself look like the company they want to do business with. Not the company they have to do business with, the company they want to do business with. That's actually a slogan we had when I worked for an engineering company in the West Midlands, and we had a channel strategy there. I'm not sure, to be honest, we ever managed to reach the level of people wanting to do business with us and being keen, but it's a worthy aspiration. That's what you need to aim for. It's interesting that I've got this down in the disadvantages column for a channel strategy because it's hard work. But actually, it can be a real advantage, because if you get this right, you can absolutely make a massive difference to your sales through the channel. In my career, I've mostly worked for businesses who sell through resellers. And the one thing I've learned from looking at competitors I've dealt with is most suppliers treat their resellers absolutely appallingly. If you set yourself up as a supplier who treats his resellers well, you're going to stand out in a crowd. So it really is an opportunity to make a difference. So that's all very well as a theory. You want to be a business that they want to do business with. How do you put that into practice? Okay, first of all, you need to support their sales team. Everybody, in a sense, if we get down to it, is a little bit lazy. We all want the easy life. And if I'm a salesperson, I will sell the products that are easiest to sell, because that's an easier life for me. Now, traditionally, that has meant that a reseller wants to know that its supplier has a massive advertising campaign, so everybody's talking about their products, and basically people come in and they just order the products. Well, that's not actually the case in the barbecue market, because I've done some research on this on your behalf. The strange thing is, there are no established leaders in this market. If you think about it, I mean, I can't think of the people I know, anyone who could name 3 barbecue manufacturers. I think actually most people would struggle to name one of them. There are no established leaders in this market. People just go in, they tend to see a barbecue and buy what they like. They really do buy the barbecue rather than the brand, which is quite strange in the modern marketplace. That means that your resellers are probably not expecting you to do a large independent advertising campaign, which is great because you haven't got the budget to do it anyway. What they will want you to do, though, is advertising through them. So they will already have advertising channels that they use. They will want you to pay them so that you have your products appearing in their adverts. Now, this is known by a variety of different terms. It's often called co-op funding, for cooperative funding. Sometimes it's called MDF, Market Development Fund. Whatever it's called, it basically means you pay and you provide the materials. So you give them the descriptions, the photographs, the videos, whatever they want, so that your adverts can go into their advertising. So it becomes a cooperative effort. There's one other thing to mention about co-op funding. In the fullness of time, once you've established your brand and you've established a track record for sales, you'll be able to attach some strings to it. So you'll provide that much funding if they sell that many barbecues. If they sell twice as many barbecues, you'll give them more funding. At the moment, though, you're a new player in the market, so you have no bargaining power. So you'll just have to take whatever the terms are at the moment and look forward to the days when you can bargain a little bit more strongly. You also want to provide them with sales materials that are suitable to their site or their venues. So we discussed earlier how you might be selling barbecues through DIY centres or caravan sites or holiday venues or garden centres. All of these will have different sales environments. You need to provide materials to them that suit their venue and the type of people who come into them. Let's take a look at what some of those materials might look like. First of all, demonstration units. This is the kind of product barbecues where if someone's gone to a reseller, if they've gone to that garden centre, they're going to want to see the product. You're going to have demonstration units out there in the field, and it's going to cost you, because you're either going to have to give them the demonstration units, or you're going to have to sell the demonstration units to them at an outrageous discount. Not only that, you're also going to have to, make sure you've got a certain level of spare parts in case it gets broken or damaged while it's on display. And if you want to sell it effectively, you're going to have to buy the add-ons as well. So instead of just a barbecue standing there looking like a very plain and sterile barbecue, put some cooking utensils around it, put some food or something around it to make it look a little bit more like something people would actually use. You're going to have to supply all of that as well, and that's going to be expense. You're also going to need to have some staff to go round to your resellers. On the one hand, they're going to have to check that the demonstration units are still looking as pristine as you want them to. But secondly, you're going to have someone who goes out there and answers your resellers' questions and deals with them face to face, who's going to be there to help them sell your products, to deal with any issues you've had with supply. And the old saying is, biggest overheads walk on two legs. So that reseller person or people, they're going to cost you money as well. You're going to need point of sale materials, because you don't just want to leave the barbecue there to try and expect it to sell itself, because it won't. So again, depending on the site, what are you going to provide? Well, you might want to put a banner wall behind the barbecue that shows people and tells people all the kind of things that barbecue can do, or what they can achieve, or what their life will be like with that barbecue. Some sites allow you to set up video screens behind it, maybe in a banner wall. So you've got to make sure you've got a video available that would go in that if you're allowed to put one up. Obviously, you've got to recognise the fact that people are not going to just walk into a site and buy a £1,500 barbecue on a whim. They're going to look at it, they're going to go away, they're going to talk about it with their friends and family, and then, if you're lucky, they're going to come back and buy it. When they leave for the first time, you've got to make sure they've got something they can take away with them. So you've got to have that point of sale material. You also need to provide sales training, and this is one of the most critical parts of it. You have enormous enthusiasm and passion about barbecues because you're manufacturing them. The sales staff at the resellers, your barbecues are just another product that they might be selling. You've got to make sure that they are just as enthusiastic about selling those products as you are. And it's your job to make them that enthusiastic. You can't leave them to work out for themselves why selling your barbecue would be such a good idea for them. You've got to do it. It's your job. Looking at the market as it stands at the moment, the way people sell barbecues is pretty old-fashioned. It's very, very functional. My barbecue has got this many rings, or this level of thermal output, or it's got this many spaces and this many ovens. It's all functional, functional, functional. So you need that information to be on a par with everybody else. But what would really help you and set you apart is the emotional benefits you could portray through your barbecues. So you'll be talking about how people can have much better parties with your barbecue. You're going to be saying how much better their life is going to be with your barbecue. You're going to be talking about how many different types of food they can cook on your barbecue. You're going to be talking about the different cooking techniques they can use on your barbecue. You're going to be talking about how easy it is to set up, how easy it is to clean, how this barbecue will become a talking point of their outdoor parties all the way through next summer. You're going to be talking about a better lifestyle that comes to them by virtue of having your barbecue. It goes well beyond the functional advantages of a barbecue that seem to be all most people talk about. In the old days, well, I'm only going back 5 or 10 years, we used to always produce for our partners what we called a sales support book. And this was basically everything anyone would need to know to sell our particular products. Well, nowadays we've moved a bit beyond sending out books and manuals, so it would be better to do it now using video. But with these videos, you want to be telling people how they can sell your barbecues. The advantage of video is it can retain the passion and enthusiasm that you have for barbecues in a way that no book or manual ever could. You can include all the buttons that people might be able to press to get people to buy, because this isn't going to be the kind of sale, it's £1,500 at least per barbecue, that someone walks in, you talk to them for 10 seconds and they say, yes, I'll have one, thank you. That isn't going to happen. So you need to be able to give them all the objection handling they're going to need. Oh, I'd never pay that much for a barbecue. Well, you ought to pay it for this barbecue because you need also to be able to provide them with the old elevator pitch. If they're only going to get someone's attention for 30 seconds, you need to tell them how to use that 30 seconds to engage them into a longer conversation about your particular barbecue. You can do all that with your sales support videos. The other level of sales support materials that you need to provide is basically anything that your reseller uses to sell. So if they have a newsletter that they send out to all their customers every couple of months, you need to give them the photographs, you need to give them the descriptions, you need to give them the ideas that would allow them to put your barbecues into their newsletter. If they keep in touch with people via Facebook groups or something like that, then you need to provide them with the videos and the content that they could publish through their Facebook group. If they use email to keep in touch with their customers, again, you need to give them descriptions, photographs, links back to your website, all the materials they could use in their promotional materials. So again, you get more coverage in their promotional materials simply because you make it very easy for them to promote your product. They don't have to keep on coming to you and saying, have you got something that would allow us to promote barbecue X this month? Because they've already got that information. So it's not a question of working out who they should put into the next newsletter. They're always going to put you in because you've always provided them with lots of information they can use. That's what makes you an easy company for them to do business with. There's one other question that people ask when you're talking about a strategy of direct or indirect. And that question is, can you do both? Can you sell direct to consumers and also sell to resellers? Well, legally and commercially, yes, you can. But it is fraught with problems. And I know this firsthand because my first job in channel sales was with a printer and copier manufacturer called Kyocera. And Kyocera only sold through resellers. We never sold direct. And that was a massive advantage for us in many situations because our competitors in the printer copier field were the likes of Canon, Toshiba, Xerox, Ricoh. All these other competitors all sold direct to customers as well as through dealers. Now, a reseller, I'll tell you, a reseller hates competition. It hates knowing there's another person 2 miles down the road that sells the same product. They hate that. But what they hate more than anything else is the idea that they're going to have to compete against their own supplier. Yeah, in that market, in the printer copier market, dealers were so frustrated when they got the whiff of a really sweet deal and then found out later they were competing against their own supplier, the manufacturer that gave them products. It drove them round the bend, and it was one of our main ways that we retained and recruited good dealers in that market. So, you can do it, but it's difficult to do and remain a valued supplier to your resellers. The only way it becomes even vaguely practically possible is if you put some kind of mechanism in place to make it clear that the resellers have got an advantage in selling. And the way you typically do that is price. You would commit to say you will never sell below retail price. Then if you give your resellers enough discount, they know they can significantly undercut your price and make a good margin. That's one mechanism you can do it that makes selling direct and indirect viable, but don't expect it to be popular, because it won't be. Okay, so apologies for that. I went on quite a long time there, but channel strategy is one of those things that, you know, I possibly could do an entire episode of Marketing Troubleshooter on, but let's leave it at that and move on to next item, website. So, and this is really entertaining because I've looked at quite a few websites and the selling barbecues, and they're crap, which is great news for you. It is unbelievable. So just let's take a look at some of these. So here's a website selling a barbecue that's just over £2,000, and its effort to sell to you, to persuade you to buy this barbecue, is they give you a photo you can zoom into. They give you a few specifications, and that's it. You're meant to then click on that and spend £2,000 on that barbecue. From my perspective, that looks like an epic fail to me. And then, here's another barbecue, even more expensive, nearly £3,000 this time. You get more pictures, you get three, well actually you don't get 3 pictures, you get 2 pictures and an artist's impression. And a few more details, but it's still very transactional, and it's still nowhere near the kind of website that would persuade me to buy that product. The next site I found is a little bit better. Over £2,000 for this barbecue. It still looks very transactional. It's telling you about a discount code. It's telling you you get a free cover. You spend £2,300 and you get a free plastic cover for your barbecue. Big deal. The one thing that's good about this site, it comes from I'm not saying the name, but it comes from a specialist barbecue seller, and they do actually have a video on there that tells you a little bit more about the video. It's a fairly good video, but it's got American voiceover, which is going to put some British purchasers off, and it's a little bit corporate. It's not very personal at all. It's very feature. It doesn't have the warmth or passion that you'd really expect from a modern video that's going to persuade you to buy something. So what that tells me is this market is wide open for someone to come in and release videos that really shows their passion about barbecues, and that's going to be you. These videos and these websites all tell me that therefore people who have already decided what barbecue they're going to buy, they're just shopping around to see where they're going to buy it from. And the only thing that's going to change in that kind of market is price. That's a market you don't want to get into. What you want to get into is a market for the best barbecue. How are you going to persuade people that yours is the best barbecue? You want a completely different sort of content on your website. You want to be providing and talking about the outcome, the end result of what people are going to get from your barbecue. It's not a better steak. It's they're going to have a better party because of the better features on your barbecue. Their lifestyle will be better because they've got your barbecue. If they didn't have your barbecue, their parties would be nowhere near as good. You want to make sure that the occasion, the party, the lifestyle becomes the star, not necessarily the barbecue. And then you're talking about, if you remember the previous video, I talked about the 3-step bounce, where you start off in a sales process always talking about the end result, the rosier future that people will find themselves in. Get that future into people's minds, then you can talk about how you're going to do it, and then you can start talking about features and benefits. In the old days, back in the 1980s, we used to talk about selling using features and benefits. Don't sell features, always sell the benefits. Well, as we moved into the 21st century, that turned into talking about the advantages you get from the benefits that are derived from the features, which is a model I quite like, and it's purely coincidental that the initials of feature, benefit, advantage are the same as Forbes, Baxter Associates. Completely coincidental, but there you go. So, for example, using that in the video, which I didn't show, but you can look it up, of that previous barbecue, they talked about the fact that one of their barbecues had luminous controls on it. But the way they promoted that was a very sterile studio shot of a darkened room with a barbecue with luminous controls on it. Really didn't get you going at all. Whereas what they could have done was an outdoor shot of a barbecue party happening at night and they can still see the controls. That then, actually, I have to say, did make me wonder, why would you have that? Because if it's pitch black and you can't see anything, great, you've got luminous controls so you can see how much heat you're applying, but you can't see if you've burnt your steak. I don't know if that's really useful at all. It does remind me of the Not the 9 o'clock news sketch about the deaf bloke and the phone with the light on. If that doesn't ring any bells, look it up on YouTube. It's an absolute classic. So, the other thing I'd say is if you've got different ways of promoting your barbecues, if you've got different things that you consider important, put each of those different things in a separate video. So create lots of videos, because people are more likely to look at 5 10-second videos than one 50-second video. It just makes it easier for them to digest. Next up, we're going to talk about advertising, which was one of the 2 key questions you posed right at the beginning. The key thing about advertising is targeting. We're not going to look at advertising if you're going through the indirect model through resellers, because we've already covered that. But if you're selling direct, the key thing is targeting your advertising. Don't try and advertise in any location or through any channel where you're advertising to anybody and everybody. So don't start advertising in supermarkets, even if you happen to sell your barbecues through supermarkets, because 99% of the people who see your advert will not be your potential purchasers. It's money mostly wasted. Don't advertise in big media that goes to everyone as well. This is where your target audience lies. So even if you're not using garden centres, even if you're not using caravan sites as resellers, it's somewhere that you could be using as venues. Basically, the people you're after are the people who consider eating inside in a warm room has been banned by papal decree. Those are your kind of markets. They're your people, and you'll find them in this kind of place. You might want to take a different approach to your advertising. That was based on venue, but you might want to take what I call the McLaren approach. So, here's my company car. Obviously not. When McLaren launched their F1 supercar, they did something very different in terms of working out how to sell it. They didn't try to target the traditional supercar market because they were new in that market, and there was already Ferrari there, there was already Porsche there was already Lamborghini there. That was a very crowded market. Instead, they said, well, who is our competition for buying this kind of product, for £1 million car? So they started looking at how people buy super yachts, how people buy executive jets. That was their kind of market. They were looking for the people with more money than sense who wanted to buy gimmicks that they wanted but really didn't need. That was their market. That's how they sold the F1. And obviously, they sold out. Your market is slightly different. You're not selling £1 million barbecue, but you are selling a barbecue that's 10 times as expensive as a basic barbecue, and they all still cook food. So how are you going to promote that luxury barbecue to your market? Your market, if you think about the people, there'll be people who play golf and tennis rather than football and pool. There'll be people who have horses, not cats. There'll be people who go on holiday to villas rather than hotels. They probably have their own villa. This is where you will find your market. They're the people who buy the luxury products, and they don't mind paying more than they need to pay to get something special. That's where your market is. They're your people. The other side of advertising we need to consider is digital advertising. Now, obviously, being a marketer of the 21st century, I love digital marketing and digital advertising because it is measurable, it's very targetable. But it has a disadvantage when you're trying to sell luxury products. Because if you were doing a digital campaign for barbecues, you're going to attract the kind of people who want to pay £99 for a barbecue. Worse still, you might get the people who are paying 99 pence for one of those takeaway trays. That's not your market. You find it difficult to refine your digital advertising to just get the high end of that market, because putting in words like luxury don't work. Terms like that are just completely devalued. A luxury version of that barbecue would be 2 micron metal instead of 1 micron metal. Luxury just doesn't work as a term. What you could do with your digital advertising is use longer phrases. So you could be talking about barbecue with luminous controls, something like that, barbecue with warming oven, etc. If you do that, you will get the right kind of people, but you have to recognise that you'll get very little traffic for those kind of adverts, and you've got to create lots and lots of adverts for it. The other thing I'd say about that is, in terms of platforms that you'd use, you're used to a business-to-business market. This is business-to-consumer. So instead of LinkedIn advertising and that kind of thing, you'd be talking about Facebook advertising and Instagram advertising. And to be perfectly honest, that's not something that we do. We do everything business-to-business. If you wanted to speak to someone who is an expert on that, I would direct you to a company called Ascendancy Internet Marketing. You can just Google them and find them, because they are absolute experts on that kind of Facebook and Instagram and business-to-consumer digital advertising. Here's another thing you need to think about as well, beyond advertising, and that's social media. You probably haven't done an awful lot. I can't see a strong social media presence for your business at the moment, because construction, girders, steel fabrications, it's not a natural fit for social media, where people want to talk with enthusiasm and passion about something they really love. People don't really get emotional about that kind of unglamorous product. Having said that, I've put this up here for a reason. On the tools is a social media channel all about the construction industry, and it's got a bigger following than lots and lots of, Unilad and lots of that kind of channel. So it is possible, but it takes a lot of years. What you've got to do with your social media channel is pass on the enthusiasm. You need someone, a host, who's going to be there to tell people why they love some kind of broad topic around barbecues. My instinct is that barbecues alone are too narrow a topic. So you want to broaden it to outdoor lifestyle and outdoor parties, etc. You want to be talking about new drinks that are going to be all the fashion next summer. You want to be talking about new types of food that they could be cooking. You could be talking about what kind of outdoor games you should be playing, what to do when it rains. You could be talking about how to cook the perfect cheeseburger on one extent, or the other extreme, how to do haute cuisine on a barbecue. Obviously, at that point, you'd be pointing out that actually you could probably only do it on a barbecue like the one you sell. You'd be talking about what utensils to buy, what tableware to buy. You'd be building a community around the subject of outdoor parties, and that would involve your kind of barbecues. Now, the problem with social media campaigns and building a following like that is it takes time. On the tools, I think, is now 7 years old, something like that. Which brings us neatly on to the last point of everything, which is timing. You first got in touch with us in July, hoping that you'd be able to launch your barbecues and make some revenue that year. Now, the weird thing about, or the great thing about SMEs is you can design and build products very, very quickly. You're very agile. It's only the likes of British Aerospace that take years or decades to develop products. You can do it quickly. Unfortunately, the sales and marketing processes take far longer to develop. It takes longer to build that kind of market. But getting the sales and marketing plan in place is absolutely essential, because it's the sales and marketing plan that's going to tell you, first of all, if it's worth doing at all. Think back to the very simple number crunching I was doing earlier when looking at the different margins you'd need dealing with indirect and direct channels. If those numbers didn't stack up properly for you, then that kind of sales and marketing planning tells you whether you should actually say, no, let's not do that at all. It's this sales and marketing planning that avoids what I call the shiny syndrome. That is the desire to pursue any new idea you just happen to think of that morning in the shower. It's this kind of planning that tells you that's a good idea, that's a bad idea. And it does take longer sometimes than developing the product itself. The topics I've covered today only scratch the surface of a full new product introduction process, an NPI process. Now, this is an exciting topic in itself, that is, but it's not something we're going to cover today. But we have at least covered some of the topics that would be part of that. So, finally, finishing off as we always do, how do the topics we've talked about today fit into the full marketing strategy? Well, we talked about growth strategy first of all. Growth strategy doesn't actually fit into this. It's more of a company strategic option. Very useful, but way over on the left-hand side. Channel strategy, again, that's a company-wide type issue. It does have elements of competitive analysis because you're looking at the pricing elements of your offering. How will you make money and how will you make your product competitively priced as well? So channel strategy fits in two different places at the same time. Your website, product listings, obviously sit way over there on the right-hand side of your strategy on the channel communications. Advertising, communications again. Social media, communications again. Then finally, the timing would be the kind of thing is a corporate decision as well. So it's quite nice to see a big spread of topics across the strategic spectrum. So I hope this has been useful and see you in the next episode. Thank you.